everyone, and welcome to another edition of Azure Administrator Study Series. I hope you guys had a wonderful day. Today is another session like we discussed yesterday. It's a continuation of the governance. So David, how's your day? Hope you had a wonderful day.
Yeah, yep. It's been good. It's been going okay. So I'm hoping that
I know it's a
after
busy day as well, right?
yeah, it's been really busy. It's been really busy and stuff. So one
Yeah.
of these days I'll be able to make enough money with like you. Uh,
My retired. It looks
yeah.
like your stock and your Bitcoin seems to be going down, but
This is
just
this
don't
is
lose hope.
this,
It will go up.
this is like an hobby for you. It's
But
like
funny thing is that I noticed that the Bitcoin have gone down a lot.
oh, has it
Yeah,
gone down even further than before?
yeah. Someone posted a picture on Facebook that at the moment the Bitcoin is around like 23K. That was yesterday, so these things move very quickly. So I'm not sure about
Wow.
the current value at the moment, but
Wow, that's crazy. 23,000. There was a time that it
well,
was 40 something,
that's an
right?
opportunity.
Is it? Is there an
Opportunity to buy
opportunity?
more.
Is
Yeah.
there an opportunity or a trap,
You
Sakofi?
have to buy the dips. Each time you see that it's gone half price from 40K to 23K, it's more like half price, right?
Is there an opportunity or is it a trap? Is the
Well,
question. Is
well, it is
it?
what it is. You know how it goes, right? Like they're watching. As soon as you buy, now it will start dropping even further down.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of like you. I think that eventually it's going to rise back,
Yeah,
but one just needs to be a bit strong and maybe be able to hold the money a bit longer and stuff. I'm not too sure.
exactly.
I have no idea what I'm talking about, but if
The,
I,
the question is that in, let's say, 5 years' time, what is it going to be? Is it going to be the
yeah, is it going to be like,
the long term strategy? Probably is the way forward, I guess.
yeah, it all seems like I'm not sure, like, because it all seems like a bet, right? It's always
It
like you're
is.
just
It
taking,
is.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so yeah, so how about you? How's your son? How's he doing? Is he doing
Yeah,
okay?
yeah. I could see he's doing very well. I mean,
Nice.
he started to walk, so
Wow.
things are going to change a lot here.
Nice one, man. That's amazing. That's
Yeah, a bit
amazing.
crawling was the problem, but once he start working ahead, it's going to be much difficult.
Now he knows how to find you.
Exactly.
I just need to walk up. This guy that usually just puts me in the straight in the cafe place. I just need to walk over to him now.
Yeah.
Okay. So today, what we're gonna do today? So what we're gonna do, Sakov, is we're gonna carry on. So today, you know what? Is our wedding anniversary, myself and Brenda. So today is our wedding anniversary.
Wow,
So we're
congratulations.
yeah, we're
Okay.
planning to go. We're probably to go out for a walk immediately after this session, right?
Okay.
So that's what we're planning to do. But in the meantime, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce a bit of concepts around governance, and then we're going to look at questions regarding last week's content and this week's content, and also just general content around authentication and authorization in Azure and governance. So we're going to look at some questions, and then we're going to go sort of like and use that as a learning tool for us to learn a bit further. So that's what we're going to do today, Sakofi.
Okay,
Okay.
looking forward to it.
Yep. So let's start first with the first option that we're going to look at today, or the first topic that we're going to look at today, which is a topic called Azure Blueprint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my screen
Yeah.
and we're going to share that. Um, and I hope you can see my screen now, right? Is it coming through?
Yeah, it's coming true.
Awesome. So let's look at Azure Blueprint to start with, and then we'll look at some question and answers for the rest of the day. So with Azure Blueprint, it's one of those tools that we can use to establish governance in our Azure subscriptions. But what is this technology? What is the service? What is it used for? How is it used? We're going to look at that today. So here is the definition, Sakov. It says Azure Blueprint, it's a declarative way to orchestrate the deployment of various resource templates and other artifacts such as this. Now, Sakofi, just imagine that this is your first time, or maybe not even your first time, right? Maybe maybe you're new to Azure, And you come over to me and you say, David, can you explain Azure Blueprint to me? And I say, Azure Blueprint is a declarative way to orchestrate the deployment of various resource templates and other artifacts.
Yeah,
As
all
that
I hear is noise.
exactly. Why do we do that in Haiti? Why? We like doing stuff like that. We like making up complicated words, right? To make something that is simple sound more complex, right?
That's right.
No. Now I need a dictionary, declarative way to orchestrate the deployment of various resource templates and other artifacts such as this. It's crazy. Essentially, what this is talking about is this is like a template for automating the provisioning of subscriptions. So, Sakofi, I have an Azure subscription. Right? If I have an Azure subscription and I want to implement governance in my Azure subscriptions, what do I need to do? Number one, I need to do a role assignment, right? I need to define who has access to what. So I'm just going to call that array. So I need to define who has access to this subscription. Number two, I need to implement governance around what people can or cannot do. So we looked at some of that yesterday. So maybe governance around cost, governance around security, governance around compliance standards. Azure policy is a good way to do that. So maybe I need to implement my policy assignment um, to this subscription. I need to deploy my resources, right, into the subscription. And for that, I'll need to create my resource groups, and then I'll need to deploy my Azure Ham template into this subscription to do that. What Azure Blueprint allows us to do is to define all of this stuff within a single template. So I can say, here's a template that contains this role assignment. There is a template that contains policy assignment. It contains resource groups that I would like to create and the template that I would like to create. And I can then use that template to provision 15 subscriptions, right? 100 subscriptions. Because I just go, essentially, you can think of it sort of like this is my baseline, right? I have a baseline defined in this blueprint template, and then I can go ahead and deploy that. So that's what this definition means. so when they're talking about declarative way to orchestrate the deployment of various resource templates and other artifacts, what they're meaning is we have a template that we can use to automate the governance of our Azure subscription. Is what they're
So
talking
this
about.
is really helpful for companies when they, let's say they are setting up a new site or whatever. They can just use these baseline policies which apply to they've already used for their other sites and then implement it straight away without going through the fussy hassle of doing this thing all over again from scratch.
Exactly, Sakofi. And if you look at the way that many organizations are going, many organizations are realizing that with the cloud, they have to decentralize a lot of their processes. So instead of having everything come from a central point, the way it's going to be able to scale is for me to decentralize a lot of processes. In other words, allow the different business units to manage more of their own deployment, right? So instead of somebody managing it centrally for them. And however, the people that I'm allowing to be able to manage these things, this is not their area of expertise, right? So you go to a development team and you say to them, you'll be provisioning your own subscriptions, right? Because the security team are overloaded right now and all that stuff. And the way for us to be able to scale this thing is to allow you to be able to take on some more of these responsibilities. If you're going to do that, you have to have something like blueprints that you can go to them to say, here is the baseline. All you just need to do, or all that will happen is it will be automatically applied when you create your subscription, right? You don't need to be going through all these processes yourself. This is not your area of expertise, right? So that's one of the advantages. There's another advantage to Azure Blueprint. Now, when we talked about role assignment in the past, Sakofi, we said with role assignment, there's no way for us to implement a deny permission, right? So with role assignment, all we're doing is we're saying these people have permission to this. If we do not define that they have permission to this, then they don't have that permission. But there's no way for me to explicitly say you're denied from doing this. And as you may know, like security team, deny sort of put their mind at rest. When they say that deny rule, it's like, whatever happens, that's denied, right? So it's sort of like there's no way to really apply. But the good thing about it is that even though with role assignments, we cannot apply deny permissions, However, using Azure Blueprint, we can apply deny assignment, deny permission, and say this is denied regardless of your regardless of the role that you're assigned to. So I remember the first time when I first saw deny assignment. So there is this service in Azure called Azure Red Hat OpenShift, which is a managed version of OpenShift. So I was testing it. I was documenting some processes around Azure Red Hat OpenShift, and there were certain things that wasn't working right. So I thought, okay, I'm going to use the similar methods that I use for Azure Kubernetes Service. I'm going to use that to troubleshoot OpenShift because they are both container orchestrators. I'm going to use that to troubleshoot that. However, I could not do anything. Right? It was like, hold on, I am the owner of this subscription. There is no Azure policy that's denying anything. I was like, I can't do anything. But then what I realized that Microsoft has done with Azure Red Hat OpenShift, or maybe Microsoft and Red Hat, is that once you deploy that service, they automatically had a denying assignment, which is not something that you can add as a customer. So for example, I'll show that to you, Sakofi. I'll show you what I mean. If I go over here to my Azure subscription, so let me show you what I mean by that. So let me come over here to my Azure subscription. And if I go to, let's go to subscriptions, I'm going to make that a bit larger so that people can see that. So here's my subscription, Sakofi. Under my subscription, if I go to access control, so if I go over to access control in my Azure subscription, you see that you'll be able to see like where it says deny assignment, but you can't really control it. So it's going to say, hey, you can't do anything. So if I go over to my subscription over here, so here we go. So it's taking me to my subscription. And then if I go to access control IAM, so let's go to access control. Here we go. Access control IAM. And once it displays this, you'll see what I mean in a minute. So you can see role assignment here, but you can see deny assignment on this side. Okay. Now, if I go under deny assignment, there's no way for me to click add, right? I can't go add deny assignment. There's no option. I cannot control it. However, that was what Microsoft did. They automatically added the deny assignment, and I was like, even though I'm the owner, I can't even log into these servers because it's managed service, right? So they denied it. However, using Blueprint, we can configure deny assignment using Blueprint, right? So let's go see the process of configuring Blueprint, and I'll show you an example of configuring Blueprint. So here's what we're going to go through very quickly. So we still have a note from yesterday. So, but let's go have a look at creating Azure Blueprint. Let's go get some space. And let's go over here. So the first thing that we're going to do, Sakofi, is when we're dealing with the blueprint, is we have to create a blueprint definition. Is the first thing that we do. So after we create a blueprint definition, then what we're going to do is we're going to publish a definition that we created. So publish blueprint definition. And after we've published it, then the last thing that we're going to do is that we're going to assign it. And we can assign it to management group, to Azure Subscription. You know, we talked about that in the Azure Administrator study series, right? So if you've forgotten about the Azure organization hierarchy, go back to our videos in the Azure Administrator study series. Sakofi has some amazing labs on management group also that you can check out. So this is the process that we're going to go through. So let's go through that process very quickly of creating a blueprint and doing all that stuff. So what I'm going to do, Sakofi, is I'm going to go back to my Azure subscription. I'm going to go look for blueprints. So blueprint, and let's go to open that. So let's bring that up. And I'm going to have Azure Blueprint over here. So blueprint, and then I'm gonna click on create, and you're going to see the option that it's going to give to me in a minute. Come on. Okay, so you can see that I can create blueprint. You can see that it has certain samples that I can use. So for example, it has this cloud adoption framework migration landing zone, so which essentially has some artifacts like ARM template, some policy assignments that are already part of that template that I can just use, right? So for example, if you just want your subscriptions to be compliant with, let's say, ISO 27001, right, you can go pick this blueprint. What you find is that that blueprint already has certain access control implemented, certain policy assignments already implemented, and then all you just need to do is apply it to your subscriptions, right?
And can you add on to this inbuilt ones?
Yes. So you see that there is an option at the top here where it says start with a blank blueprint. So essentially what you can just do is that you can just go create your own if you wanted to. So which is actually what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go start a blueprint creation from scratch. So for this particular one, I'm just going to call it custom blueprint. Let me maximize that a little bit more so that people can see that. So I'm going to call that custom blueprint. I'm just going to say testing blueprint capabilities. So definition location is where I sort of specify the scope that I want to apply that. So I only have a subscription, so I don't have management groups or all that set up. So I'll specify my subscription and I'll specify that. So next is the artifact. So that's the thing that we talked about earlier, Sakofi. So this is where I can specify what are the role assignments, what are the policy assignments, what are the resource groups, what are the ARM templates that I want to add to that. So that's what this allows me to do over here. So if I go over to add artifacts, and under add artifacts, I'm going to specify the artifact type, and you can see the different types that I have. So policy assignment, role assignment, ARM template, resource group. In my particular use case for what I'm excuse me, trying to do, I'm going to create a resource group. So I'm just going to specify a resource group there. So for the artifact name, I'm going to say test resource group. So I'm going to leave all the other settings. I can automatically add tags if I wanted to. I'm just going to go add that resource group. Now, within my resource group, let's say I want to always ensure that we create a storage account to collect things like diagnostic logs, So this allows me to be able to control this centrally, create that once, and then apply that. Because that's one of the things that people don't think about when they're creating their subscriptions. Do I have a storage account that I'm going to use to collect my diagnostic logs, right? Do I have all this stuff in place? So maybe within this particular resource group, I want to create a storage account to collect diagnostic logs within the subscription. I can go under artifact type, and under artifact type, I can go to create, like, let's say, a resource manager template. And I already have a template here, so it's just a simple template that's going to create a storage account. So that's what this is going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my template, and I'm going to put that in the template section over here. So I have my template over there. So the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to specify my artifact display name. I'll call this diagnostic logs storage accounts. So I have that, and I'm going to add that. So now I have a resource group and the templates that I want to deploy. So once I have that in the position that I want it to be, I can go ahead and save that. So now I'm going to save that as a draft. And that's just going to take a few seconds to save. So once it's saved that, if I go under blueprint definitions, I'll be able to see the blueprint definition that I just created right now. So that's my custom blueprint over there, right? So you can see that it's just the draft. So the next thing that we mentioned, Sakofi, is that once we've created it, we want to publish it. So that's the next thing that I'm going to do. So I have my blueprint that I created over here. I can select it. And then when I select it, I can go ahead and I have the option here to publish this blueprint. So publishing essentially means I'm bringing it to production and making it available to use, right? And this also makes it very easy because what I can do is I can begin to version it. For example, I can say this is version 1. So if I make changes to that later, and then I can say this is version 2. So I can check how many subscriptions do I have that are compliant with version 1 of my blueprint or with version 2 of my blueprint and all the other stuff. So in this case, I'm just going to specify version 1. Just going to say baseline subscription blueprint. And I'm just going to click on publish, and that's going to publish that blueprint. So once that's published, the next thing that we said we're going to do is we're going to assign it. So in this case, I'm going to assign it to a subscription, but you can actually assign it to the management group and apply it to multiple subscriptions if you wanted to. So I'm going to click on Assign Blueprint over there. And on the Assign Blueprint, I'm going to select the scope that I want to assign it to. And this is where the interesting thing comes in. So you see what I'm going to do here, Sakofi. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, so that's the blueprint that I want to assign. So the location, so if I select East, let's leave that at, let's say, East US. So let's go East US. So blueprint definition. So if I have multiple version, I can specify the version. So I want version 1, which is the only version that I have.
Yeah.
But you see this thing here, Sakofi, called lock assignment. So this is what I can use to apply the 9 assignments that we saw earlier that I showed you. So you cannot control it directly from under role assignment, from under IAM. However, using Blueprint, you can do that. So for example, I can set this to read only. And then what that's going to do is that it's actually going to apply a deny assignment. So, and it's going to need a managed identity to do that. So I'll leave that option. And I'm going to specify values for the resources that it's going to create. So for the resource group name, I'm just going to say tests blueprint. For the resource group location, I'm going to leave that at East US. So diagnostic log storage account I'm creating, so the parameter, I'm going to create locally redundant storage. And then I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to assign that. So if I go ahead and click on assign. And once we've assigned it, we can also monitor it. So, and Sakofi, do you want to guess like one of the other benefit of that deny assignment that I specified over here? So if I go back to, we talked about that deny assignment that we can assign using Blueprint. So it also has one benefit to it. So what do you think that benefit is for deny assignment using Blueprint?
So you say you got another benefit in terms of
yeah. So it's sort of like, if you think about like the way that this works, what that means is that Blueprint becomes the way that I manage my governance, and no one can modify that, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So like what Vijay said. So Vijay said, deny assignment has higher precedence over owner permission. Yes. So and that's the good thing, is that no one. So essentially, what that means is this is the pipeline. If we need to make changes to the governance structure of our subscriptions, it comes through Blueprint. It has to come through Blueprint because no one else can make that change. So it has to come through Blueprint. So only Blueprint has the permission to do that. Right? A bit deeper now, Sakofi, that's one of the reasons why you notice that if I go to, remember we talked about role costs, and we actually talked about it like I believe last week also. So when we talked about role-based access control, right? So that's one of the reasons why you notice that the contributor role in Azure excludes the permission to modify Blueprint. So the reason for that is because if the contributor role, which is not meant to give you permission to modify any, which is not meant to give you the right to modify any permission, if you have permission to Blueprint, you can use that to bypass that policy.
That's right. Okay.
So yes, so that's the reason why, because it's strange, right? If you go to under roles and you notice that the contributor role is excluding Blueprint. So let's go to here very, very quickly. So it's taking its time. Come on. So okay, if I go to contributor here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it. Actually, there is an option that I can use to just clone it, but I think because I've maximized it so much, it's hiding that option for me. Here we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clone this contributor role. I just want to show that to you so that it will help our understanding to understand why are they doing this, because sometimes it's very good to be able to explain certain things, right? So it's not as if this is like, but it's just good to know, oh, that's the reason why they're doing this. So the reason why the contributor role by default you notice that if you go under the permissions, that it's excluded for the contributor role. You notice that it's excluding permissions to Blueprint. So you see that. So it says it's excluded, so not actions. Contributor role is excluded from Blueprint write or delete permission, because otherwise that becomes a way that you can use to bypass controls if you're able to do that as a contributor. So anyways, let's go have a look at this. So assign Blueprint, let's refresh. Let's see what we have. So that's succeeded. So let's go verify that what we've done is working or has worked. So what we're going to do is we're going to go under resource groups. So I expect to find my resource group that I created using Blueprint, or that Blueprint created. I expect to find that. Come on, come on, come on. So that is this resource group. So test Blueprint, that one. And if I go to on the come on, come on, come on. If I go to under access control IAM, you notice that now I have my denying assignment. So that should show as a deny assignment here. So deny assignment. And it says nothing to display, but just give it a wow. So there you go. Can you see that? So that's denied all principals, and so it's denied. So no matter who I am, so what that means is that if I come in here and I try to do something like, let me go add a resource. Let me go to overview. I'm just going to try to add a resource into that resource group over there, and I'm going to see like how that's going to try to work. So I'm just going to go to add a marketplace resource. So let's go to add the marketplace resource, and come on, the Azure portal. I think I know the reason why it's Sakofi. I think it's because my computer is struggling for resources. I don't think it's Azure portal. Yeah, I think it's because my computer is struggling for resources. So apologies to everyone for that. So all you just need to do is you just need to just be patient with me. I'm trying to build myself up to Sakofi's level. So just be patient with me. Sarkozy didn't get there overnight. You know, he has a gold farm for a long time. So,
You mean
so
I have a good farm?
yeah, you do. So he didn't get there overnight. So eventually we'll get there. So don't worry. Let's just keep learning Azure. I don't think that we'll get there just by learning Azure. Have you seen like some of this stuff, Sarkozy? Like it's very funny. Like where certain people go. All you need to do, Sarkophis, you just need to just keep trying and keep working hard, and then you find
Yeah,
out that they
right.
they got like £5 million in every time somewhere. Okay, so let's go to review plus create. Yeah, this is gonna take a while, but eventually what will happen is that that's not gonna work. It's going to fail. Yeah, it's gonna fail. It's gonna go. You do not have the permission, and that's how Blueprint can help us, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so that for Blueprint, and hopefully that's going to do for the rest of the day. I mentioned this to Sakofi earlier. What we're going to do the rest of the day is we're going to go to answer some questions. So the questions that we're going to look to answer is we're going to look to answer questions relating to what we talked about last week, which is questions on design for authentication and authorization. And we're going to answer some questions relating to design for governance. So we're going to answer questions relating to those two sections. So hope you're ready to answer some questions, ladies and gentlemen. So let's get to some questions for today. So here are some questions for you. So first question for you today is this question right here. So let's look at the question. So read the question carefully. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a timer. I'm going to give you about 60 seconds to ponder the question and then give us what you think your answer is. And then we're going to look at the answer and we're going to use that to explain the concept if we need to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this one up, and I'm going to say 1 minute. So let's get, oh, okay, sorry. So 1 minute, save that. Okay, so we're going to get ready. Okay, so you have an Azure subscription as shown in figure 1 below. So you have figure 1 over here. You attempt to add a role assignment as shown in figure 2. So you want to add a role assignment as shown in figure 2. What should you do first? So have a quick read through the question and let us know what you think the answer is, and then we're going to review the answer. So let's go ahead and start now. So this is going to test your knowledge on designing for authentication and authorization, and it's also going to test your knowledge on designing for governance. So let's see. Hello, Nagesh. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Apologies if I'm not. So thanks for joining us. If you have any questions, Nagesh, feel free to put your question in the chat window. So that's fine. So, but now it's question time. Let's test your knowledge on authentication and authorization and governance. So do you think the answer is A, B, C, or D? What do you think? Okay, I think that I may probably had some. Let me add 1 minute 30 seconds to allow people to ponder that a bit further. Okay, so let's see what the answers are. So Sam said modify the video role at the subscription level. Okay, and Vijay says D, modify the video role at the subscription level. Okay, and James says B, configure access control on VM2.
So that's the answer you have so far.
Oh, let's see. Okay, so you have an Azure subscription as shown in figure 1 below. So here's figure 1. You attempt to add a role assignment. So you want to add a role assignment to VM1. So what should you do first? So I think if I look at the options, I think I'll agree that D should be the right answer. Modify the video role at the subscription level. So apologies, let me just quickly sort something out. So I think I agree that the answer to this should be D is what and I'll explain the reason why that is the answer in a minute. So apologies. Let's just get a few things all set correctly. So I messed up my animation. So I agree that the answer should be D. So the reason for that here is that if you notice here, we're trying to assign the reader role to virtual machine 1 is what we're trying to do. So we're trying to assign that role to virtual machine 1. So and virtual machine 1 already has a managed identity. So that's the reason why we can see it here, right? So essentially, we're trying to assign this as shown here. So what should we do first? So essentially, we're modifying the reader, not the reader role. This is a bit confusing. See the reason why that can be a bit confusing. Yeah, so this should be modify the reader role assignment. So it should have the word assignment because otherwise it's going to be confusing to think modify the reader role definition. So apologies for that. So I'll agree that the answer is D because essentially over here it says you attempt to add the role assignment as shown in this figure. So you're trying to add that for VM1. So that's what we're trying to do. Okay, so let's go for the next question and let's see. So read this one carefully and then we'll bring up the timer. So let's read it first and then we'll bring up the timer. So you have an Azure AD tenant linked to an Azure subscription. The tenant contains a group named admins. You need to prevent users except for members of the admins group from using the Azure portal and Azure PowerShell to access the subscription. What should you do? So you want to prevent members of the admins group from using Azure portal or Azure PowerShell to access the subscription. What should you do? So you have 5 options over there. You have 1 minute 30 seconds to let us know what you think is the answer. So let's go ahead and start the timer now. Oh, okay, Nagesh. So we'll have a look at that. Okay, I can see that we have some other option. Yeah, so I agree with you, Vijay, because option 1, because VM1 is not available. So let us know what you think the answer is to this one. Essentially, what it's saying is you want to prevent members of an Azure AD group from being able to use Azure Portal or Azure PowerShell to access the subscription. How are you going to implement that? Awesome. I can see that B. Let's see. So we're getting close. Any other answers to this? I can see E from the Azure subscription to configure access control. And we've come to the end of that. So let's review what the answer is. Okay, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, the first one came from Michael. So Michael selected to configure IAM.
Oh, I think that's the previous question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah,
think that's
yeah. So we got
James
B
V.
James.
Yeah, and Vijay says
Vijay
E.
Say E.
And then I can see Gopal and Sandy said
Gopal
E
said
also.
Yeah.
So let's see what the answer is. So I think this one, only James got this correctly. So the answer is B. So the reason for that is what we are trying to do here, it's not to prevent just general permission. What we're trying to do here is to be more specific. We're trying to say you can use any other method to access the Azure subscription or any other allowed method or stuff. However, you cannot use Azure Portal or Azure PowerShell. The way to implement that is to use conditional access policy. Azure policy cannot allow us to implement that because Azure policy doesn't allow us to say if a user is using this particular application, do not allow them. So we cannot do that with Azure policy. Azure policy just allows us to set rules to say you're allowed to do this or not necessarily the point of access. Same with Azure Access Control, we're just defining permission. So Azure conditional access policy is what we use. So if you're Azure Console app natively in conditional access, but there's something called the Microsoft Azure option. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring up that option. So let me go to here. Let's go to, I'll bring up the show you, and actually I'll put the link in the chat, in the document, in the chat window for you. So here's a typical use case for conditional access, and then I'm going to show you how that is done. So with this option, what you're trying to do is you want to actually block certain people from using the Azure. So the way to do that is there is a particular special application called Microsoft Azure Management, and then you can restrict Microsoft Azure Management, and then you can specify a particular group, and you can say if this particular group are trying to use Microsoft Azure Management to access, then we're going to deny that. And you can see that Microsoft Azure Management includes Azure Portal, Azure PowerShell, and many other tools. So essentially, if you're trying to use those endpoints, it's not going to allow you to use that if you configure that. So using that. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. So let's go to have a look at the next question. So this will help us to essentially strengthen our knowledge and understanding also. So let's have a look at the next question. So this one should be a bit more straightforward for you. So let's see. Your company has an Azure subscription. You enable MFA for all users. The company's help desk reports an increase in calls from users who receive MFA requests while they work from the company's main office. You need to prevent users from receiving MFA requests when they sign in from the main office. What should you do? So let's go bring up the timer. So have a quick read through the question and let's know what you're going to do. So you have 4 options here. Can see some questions and some answers are coming in.
Yeah.
So this one, I can see why this one can be a bit of a tricky one. It's a bit of a tricky one, but it's going to help our learning because we're going to break it down. We're going to break it down in a minute. We're going to break it down in a minute. So we have about 20 more seconds. So I can see we have 2 A's.
Got B.
With B. Awesome.
All right.
So 3, 2, 1. There we go. So
Okay, we got A from James.
awesome. So we have A from James. And we have A from Sunny. And B from awesome.
B.
Okay. So let's try to explain this. So whenever we're talking about enabling MFA in Azure, there are different options that we have. We mentioned that, I believe, last week. So we can enable MFA on a per user basis. Actually, there are a few options that we have. Number one, we can enable MFA globally. So globally. And what that means is that regardless of who you are, we're just going to enable MFA for everyone. There is an option called security defaults that we can use to enable this. So security default. So understand the different options for enabling MFA with Azure. So enable MFA globally using security default. So I'll show you that option very, very quickly. If I go over to the Azure AD, and in Azure AD, if I go over to under properties, I can go to the under properties, I can go to configure security default, and I'll be able to have that option. Come on, come on, come on. Sir Kofi, I really need a new laptop.
Yeah.
I really, really need a new. I tell
no,
you,
no good news about the Surface Pro.
no, and I think I had a look at Visor. I think it was maybe it was James or someone last week. Yeah, have a look at this. I could have it. Can you see that? 100% CPU.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I think it recommended Visor to me last week, and I had a look at Visor, and I saw a good spec, and guess what? It's out of stock.
Is it just the UK or what?
I'm not even sure. I just said I so maybe that's a good point. So maybe I should have a look and see and see other locations and see. So if you have a look over here, if I go under properties, under here, and under properties, I have this option here. If I scroll down, called manage security defaults. If I enable this option and I set this option to yes, it's going to enable certain security defaults, including MFA for everyone, regardless of whether you're a global admin or not. It's going to enable MFA for everyone. Obviously, that's not a good idea because at the minimum for your break glass account or your emergency account, you want to exclude MFA from them. So that's globally. We can enable MFA on a per user basis, right? On a per user basis. And in order for us to enable MFA on a per user basis, we can do that from the users option here. And under the users option, we can go to the MFA settings, and then we can configure that. So if I go to on the MFA option over here, right, and this is the option that we can use, and then I can use this to enable MFA for individual users. I can use it to enable MFA on an individual user basis. But then we can also enable MFA using conditional access. Conditional access allows us to be more granular, where I can say I want to enable MFA only in certain scenarios, right? So that's using conditional access. So those are options that we have that we can use to enable MFA in Azure AD. To look at this particular, so I can see Vijay says break glass. Yeah, so another way, so break glass is also called the account. So I think we
Yeah,
talked about that last week. At the
that's
minimum, Microsoft recommend having two. All right, Sakofi, I think we talked last week, right?
yeah, we did. Yeah,
At the minimum, Microsoft recommends having two emergency accounts so that you can always recover if you accidentally lock yourself out. So what you do is you have those two emergency accounts, you have them with very, very strong password,
I wanted.
you monitor their use, you make sure that no one is using them to sign in. If anybody uses them to sign in, that should raise an alert. You test them from time to time, right? So you make sure that they're not disabled. So those kind of protection and stuff. So yes, minimum of two is what Microsoft recommends. So the answer to this one is, let's go to the answer. The answer is, so this one can be temporary. When you are enabling MFA using conditional access, if you want to, if you want an for the first thing that you need to do is you need to create a conditional. But in this option does not solve the problem. This is the first step. So with conditional access, you first of all have to create a named location, right? And then the next thing that you have to do is go exclude that named location in your policy. So this is just giving you step one, but it doesn't give you step two. So it doesn't solve the problem by just doing this. However, just doing this option of from MFA service setting, creating a trusted IP range is going to solve that. Because what that means is if I go over here, service settings over here, and then I can go to skip multi-factor authentication for request from the phone, just adding the IP address range here of, let's say, 1.1.1.0/24, and just adding that IP address range there. That keeps multi-factor authentication requests from that following IP address range. However, if I'm doing that with conditional access and I go to under Azure AD, I go under security, and under security, I go to my conditional, I go to under conditional access. Come on. And here we go. my computer is like, yeah, apologies, ladies and gentlemen. So you see, you can see one of the differences. This is ladies and gentlemen, this is the reality of life, right? The difference between the difference between the super rich, the people they call like those super rich.
So
Okay,
there's
you see that
already
Sarkozy
great
didn't have this
like the
problem.
ice.
It does. This is not a problem for Sarkozy. It's not a problem for him. It's like I don't relate to your problem. You see the way he was talking. It was like Did you see what I said? Oh, Sarkozy, I wasn't able to find the computer that I wanted. Sarkozy was like, "Have you tried other countries? Like I deal in business with US, Canada, Germany all the time. Have you tried all these other countries?" I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know I could do that." It's like it's a different lifestyle. Work with rich people and you begin to see like this type of lifestyle. So if I go under if I go under conditional access, if I create a named location, yes, that's the first step to doing that. But then I'll then need to go under my policy, and then I'll then need to or add that particular location under that policy. So there's some comment in the chat window. So let's have a
Yeah.
quick.
So let me just bring it. I got a question from James. He said, "I've never understood the MFA option for use option. Is this legacy? I think it is all conditional access right going forward. Conditional access is mainly if you don't have a P2 and I believe it was meant to be P1 access."
Okay, P1, P2 license. So, very, very good question. So, it is an option that is legacy, but it's not gone away. It's not going away. So at least that I've read in terms of the per user MFA. So the truth is that organizations want that sort of flexibility, right? I want to be able to. So the only one to me that doesn't really make so, and you're right, James. So because it also depends on your licensing level. For example, the options that I shared with you on a global basis using security default, we mentioned that that's going to enable MFA for everyone, including your break glass account, emergency account. That's not what you want, but guess what? If your Azure AD level is the free edition of Azure AD, this is the only option that's available to you. You have to deal with that, right? The life of the, Sakofi will relate to this, like Sakofi's line when it gets to the airport, first class, you walk straight in, the rest, everybody else has to queue. That's life. So if you have the free edition of Azure AD, the only option that you have is to use security default. You can also enable FA only for global administrators, right? But you're not going to make people global administrators because you want to enable MFA for them. It's like, I'm going to give you the key to the whole room, to the whole house, because I want to enable MFA for you. That doesn't make sense. So essentially, if you're doing that, so that's when people would typically use security default if they only have the free edition. So per user MFA, it's possible if you have Premium P1 license. Actually, if you have Office 365 edition also, you can use per user MFA. So what that allows you to do is to essentially say, I'm going to require MFA regardless of which application that you're using. And I've seen security teams in organization that's the way that they want to do things, right? They want blanket. Essentially, I've seen security organizations that have gone, we want MFA regardless of who you have, regardless of where you're connecting in the office or out of the office. We're making it a blank configuration. So that's sort of like the option, right? Conditional access, which is only available if you're using Premium P1 version of Azure AD and upwards. So that gives you more flexibility. So with conditional access, what you're trying to do is to get the balance between security and usability. So maybe it's like, okay, this scenario is very, very difficult to compromise. We're going to skip MFA for you, right? However, this scenario, we want to do that. So then you can go ahead and do that.
We got another question from James. So he said that MFA applies to guest slash B2B users. I think MS fixed this and it is still something like conditional access.
Yeah, so does MFA apply to guest B2B users? Yes, I think MFA, this is something like conditional access. So you can do that with conditional access. You can essentially creating your conditional access policies. You can also require MFA for external users. So for example, when I'm creating a new policy, I can define X and I can say this, I'm going to require MFA every time they're accessing any of my applications. So MFA is going to be completed in their from their Azure AD organization, but I can require it. In other words, if MFA is not going to be allowed from the Azure organization, they won't be able to access my application. So if I go over here, when I define my users and groups in conditional access, I can be granular. I can say all guest and external users. And when I get to the grant option, I can say I want to require MFA for all external users, right? So I can say I want to require MFA for them. So in other words, they've got to complete MFA in their Azure AD tenant if they are going to be able to access my application. So that's what that means. Hopefully that answers your question, James. Hopefully. If it doesn't, let me know, and then we can see. Okay, so let's go for the final question for today. So I'm looking at the time here. So let me pick a question that will be good, because then I can go for a walk with my wife, and then we can do that. Let's see. Okay, this one will be sort of like a role assignment thing, and then we're going to stop here for today. So let's have a look at this one. So here's the question, ladies and gentlemen. So read it carefully. So you have a hierarchy of Management groups and Azure subscriptions are shown in figure 1. So we have figure 1 over here. You have a root management group, 2 child management groups, and 2 subscriptions. The Azure resources are shown in table 2 is what this should say. So apologies. Sorry, table 2 is what this should say. Apologies. So you create the resources as shown here. You assign roles to users as shown in table 3. So this is table 3. So you assign the roles as shown here. For each of the following statements, select yes if the statement is true, otherwise select no. First statement, you can remove user 1 from the contributor role for resource group 1. So let's have a look at that. So I'll just give 1 minute each. So we're not going to make this 1.5 minutes. Let's make that smaller. Apologies. Just going to put that over here and just going to give just 1 minute. So can you remove user 1 from the contributor role for resource group 1?
Okay, we got one.
So let's
VJ.
see.
All right. So there we go.
The answers that we have are, and then we're going to trace, and then we're going to start so I can see. Okay, we can have yes, no, yes. Let's see what other options that we have. Oh, apologies. Apologies, Nagesh. Sorry about that. And then we have no, no, yes from Coco. Okay, let's see. So what we have here is you have the owner role, and then you assign permissions to users. Sorry, you assign roles to users as shown in table 3. So you create these resources in subscription 1, subscription 2, and then resource group 2. So, and then you assign roles to users as shown over here. So you have contributor in the management group. So you can remove user 1 from the contributor role for resource group 1. Is that yes or no? So can we do that? The answer to that is no. The answer to that is no. The reason for that is because user 1 is assigned the contributor role on the management group level. So if user 1 is assigned the contributor role, so we're just going to say C on this level. So we have resource group 1, which is in subscription 1. So here we have resource group 1. Can I go over to resource group 1 and remove this role assignment on this level? The answer to that is no. So that's the reason why that is no. So you cannot remove an assignment on a higher level at a lower level, right? It's inherited automatically, and you cannot disable inheritance with role assignment. So user 2 can delete virtual machine 2. So I can see Gopal is in the direction there. So let's see. Number 2, user 2 can delete virtual machine 2. So we have virtual machine 2, which is created in resource group 2. Now resource group 2 is in subscription 2. So let's go resource group 2. Now user 2 has contributor permission on management group 2. So user 2 has contributor permission on this level. So can user 2 delete virtual machine 2?
No.
What do you think? So user 2 has contributor permission on the management group level, right? And resource group 2 is over here. Can user 2 delete virtual machine 2? The answer to that is yes, because contributor gives you permission to do everything apart from modify permission. So because you have contributor permission on this level, essentially you can do anything at this level and at the lower level, right? Does that make sense, Sakofi?
Yeah.
Yeah, because user 2 is a contributor, so you can see. So essentially, once you draw out this diagram, it makes sense because user 2 is assigned contributor permission on management group 2. And we know that resource group 2 belongs to under subscription 2, which is under
So,
management group 2. So if user 2 has that permission on this level, they can definitely delete virtual machine 2, which is under here. So they can definitely delete that. So the answer to that is yes. And then final question for today that we're going to stop. You can add user 3 as a contributor for resource group 1. So we have user 3 who is so tenant root. So user 3 over here is as the reader role. So you can add user 3 as a contributor for resource group 1. So can you do that? The answer to that is yes. So user 3 has reader permission over here, but it does not mean that you cannot assign them higher privileged on a lower level. So that's going to work. So the answer to that is yes. So the final answer to that is no, yes, yes. So Gopher was very close. Vijay was also very close. So yes, no, yes. So I can say Gopher got no, yes, yes. Gopher got 2 out of 3, and Vijay got yes, no, yeah. Vijay got 1 out of 3. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's where we'll stop for today. So, really, really appreciate you joining us for today. So, hopefully, you got. So, one of the things that we'll try to do is we try to mix it up. Sometimes just talking and talking and talking is not fun, right? Let's test our knowledge. Like, let's see
yes.
how much we can analyze scenarios, because architecture is not just about designing stuff and stuff. It's also about being able to take a scenario and understand it and be able to analyze it, right? So essentially that's what we're doing with these questions. We look at a scenario, we'll break it down, we try to analyze it, and that means that we have actual understanding, right, of what we're looking at. And if we don't get it, that's absolutely fine. We can explain the answers. You can ask questions. We can try to explain the answers. If we're able to explain it accurately, just reach out to us on Twitter, on stuff. There's a waiting list for Sarkoph's Twitter, so that's going to be difficult. But reach out to on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and let's have a conversation and let's see if we can understand it together a bit
That's right.
more.
And I
Okay.
think the type of question is also in line with the type of question you might see in the exams as well. So
Yes,
it's a
they are.
very good practice.
They are definitely in line with that. Okay, so that's where we stop today, Sarkofi.
Okay. Thank you guys for joining this session. And our next one will be next week. So hopefully
Yes.
you'll join us. So we will
So what?
definitely. Yeah, go
Let me
ahead.
see the topic that we're doing next week. I believe that we've got. Where's that topic? Let me see if I've got that open here. So I actually have that over here. So the topic for next week is network solutions. We're going to be looking at designing network solutions. So I'm thinking that we're going to do, because I don't want to be repeating the same thing that we talked about under administration. So what we're going to do is that we're going to mix it up with some architecture level questions, and that will help our understanding.
That's
So
right.
Nagesh asked the question earlier, David, where can I find recording? So go to this YouTube channel. So Sakofi and myself are working on a separate YouTube channel for this live study group. But for now, go to the YouTube channel that you're currently watching us from,
Yeah.
Nagesh. Subscribe to that. Watch Sakofi's lab videos I did earlier, and you'll be able to see like the previous videos there. So thanks very much, everyone. I'll see you.
All right. Thank you guys. See you next week. All right. Bye.